Hey everyone, welcome to Hello Road. My name is Ethan, and this is the Acura Integra Type S. I've been looking forward to this day for a while. Acura graciously let me borrow this Apex Blue Pearl Integra Type S for a week. And I'm going to spend nearly every moment I get with this car on these lovely winding back roads just outside of Los Angeles. And on the surface, given that it shares most components with the new Honda Civic Type R, this car looks like it's going to be right up my alley. I owned a championship white FK8 Civic Type R for a year, which I totally regret selling. And I owned a super pristine third gen Acura Integra LS, which I also regret selling. Both of those vehicles were super enjoyable. And you know what? This one is too. Okay, so here's the headline with this car. The Integra Type S gives you just about the same performance as the wild and outrageous Civic Type R, but in a more mature package. The latest Type R has received heaps of praise. It handily broke front-wheel drive lap records, and it's simply one of the best handling cars on the planet. So, is this Integra Type S just a Type R in a fancy evening gown? You know, to be honest, I was ready to write off this as just sort of like a dolled up Civic. But as it turns out, they made a bunch of changes here to try to set this apart from its Honda sibling. First off, the styling. Now, the new Civic Type R certainly has a much more restrained exterior design than the previous gen, but I actually like this Acura sheet metal even more than the Civic. Now, there were some complaints about the new Integra's design when it was first announced, but I think that it was mainly from people who thought Acura would actually build a two-door sports coupe in today's car landscape. Yeah, I wish we still had all of those sporty compact car choices from the 80s and the 90s, but unfortunately, the reality of modern automobiles is that crossovers rule the sales charts. And I think we need to be glad that Acura even made a passenger car at all and didn't just slap the Integra badge on a dowdy crossover with a CVT. I'm looking at you, Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross. So this Type S has a fantastic wide body look with these chunky fender flares. It's got an aluminum hood with a functional hood vent, larger lower air intakes, and a diffuser on the rear with triple exhaust. And instead of the Civic Type R's huge wing, we have a cute little spoiler on the lift back. I love the look of the front end, and I dig the rear too. And from a practicality standpoint, I appreciate that this is a liftback and not just a sedan. It looks purposeful and sporty, but it doesn't scream, "Look at me," or "I want a drag race," which is nice because you won't have hooligans in clapped out Infinitis trying to drag race you at every stoplight, which is pretty much what happened when I owned my Type R. Like, every day was kind of annoying. All right, so let's talk about this drivetrain and prepare for a mouthful of praise because that's pretty much all I have for it. Under the hood is the same turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder as the Type R, but it's been tuned to deliver 320 horsepower, 5 more than the Type R. And we also get 310 pound-feet of torque and a touch more part throttle mid-range torque. Now on paper, I appreciate this extra power because this car is a touch heavier, just 31 pounds to be exact, but in reality, can I feel the difference? I'm not really sure, but thanks for those extra horses, Acura. I'll take them. Now onto this 6-speed manual gearbox, and I will continue on with heaps of praise. This gearbox is simply one of the best I've ever experienced. The shifts are smooth, the throws are short, engagement is precise, and this shift knob has a leather sleeve as opposed to the fully metal knob on the Type R. Less chance for second-degree burns, I guess, but if you're a masochist, you can get those burns if you like because the metal knob is an option. So no automatic transmission is available with this Type S, which puts it in a very small category of vehicles. Chances are, if you're interested in this Type S, you love driving a manual transmission. Sadly, cars like this are becoming a thing of the past. So thanks Acura for keeping manuals alive. Now, some potential competitors of this Type S, the Audi S3 and the Mercedes CLA 35 AMG, are available with all-wheel drive. And we've only got front-wheel drive here on this Type S. But the lack of all-wheel drive doesn't really seem to hinder the Integra. It can pull out of just about any corner with ease, thanks to its limited slip front differential and completely unique dual-access front suspension. So normally pairing gobs of horsepower with a front-wheel drive setup results in terrifying, nightmare-inducing torque steer, but Acura's clever suspension design mostly keeps everything in check. So if you care about straight line performance, acceleration to 60 miles per hour occurs in just over 5 seconds. Yeah, you can get to 60 a lot more quickly in a number of German competitors, which can be outfitted with launch control and fast shifting automatic transmissions. Now, I've said this a few times in other videos, but 0 to 60 times are just completely overrated, especially in a car like this. This car is going to be much more enjoyable to drive than those Germans on a winding road, because you've got this sublime manual transmission. You got this eager 2-liter motor. It's really lightweight. It only weighs 3,200 pounds. And I think because of that, this Type S embodies much about what made older Integras so much fun. Okay, so let's talk about the drive modes here. We've got Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus. Now, I've been in Sport Plus for most of this video, but let's dial it back down to Comfort for a bit. If you've driven both the new Civic Type R and this Integra Type S, you'll immediately notice some pretty substantial differences between the two. The suspension in Comfort mode here is much more compliant, and the steering is a lot lighter. And if you're just driving around doing errands and doing boring stuff, which is pretty much like 95% of the driving that you're likely to be doing, you're going to appreciate the softer ride and more luxury-focused damping profile. The most aggressive mode here, Sport Plus, is comparable to Sport on the Civic Type R, and the Sport mode here is comparable to the Type R's Comfort mode. So everything here has been shifted to more of like a street focus versus a racetrack focus. But when you dial it back to Sport Plus, it's going to be plenty aggressive for just about any type of street driving you can throw at it. The steering tightens up substantially, the suspension gets much more firm. I don't care that this is technically not as hardcore as a Civic Type R. To be honest, the Type R probably has too much capability for public roads. And even though this Type S is just ever so slightly softer, it's just as much fun. We need to recognize the colossal grip that this car has. It's just flat around every corner. So much grip. It's nuts. The steering is so good. If there is any body lean, it's almost imperceptible. And with all of this potential for speeding tickets and careening off of the edge of cliffs, you're gonna want good brakes too. And once again, the Type S delivers. They are fantastic. It will stop you from 70 miles per hour in just 153 feet. We also have to give some recognition to these tires. Apparently, it's a bespoke Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tire that was developed specifically for the Integra Type S. Fancy. We're also riding on a 19-inch wheel that is actually lighter than the Type R's wheels, so less unsprung weight at the corners. And in this Sport Plus mode, Acura gives you a few exhaust burbles here and there, which is pretty neat. It's something that the Type R doesn't provide. And while it does have a slightly deeper tone than the Type R, thankfully it's not too loud or too annoying. It's super fun when you're on a deserted road like this one, but not so loud that your neighbors will hate you when you leave for work in the morning. And speaking of sound, we've got more sound insulation here on the Type S compared to the Civic, so it is a touch quieter on the inside. All right, let's pull over for a bit and take a closer look at this interior. Okay, so on the inside, it is giving me Civic vibes, but there are a few upgrades here that make it look a little bit nicer. And keep in mind, the Civic is already a nice place to be. Got some nice aluminum accents here and on the door handles, and then you got these color match inserts on the door panels, and right here on the passenger side by the dash. Air vents that are very similar to the Civic, but I love these. These look awesome. This interior color is called Orchid. You got this black center section right here on the seats. And of course, this being a Honda, the ergonomics are fantastic. Everything is exactly where you need it to be. The materials here don't feel super high-end, but they are very nice. So unlike the Civic Type R, you have a power seat on the driver's side here. It's 12-way power adjustable, but you still got a manual seat on the passenger side. And these seats are decently comfortable. They're quite firm, but I think you kind of want that in a car like this. Legroom is amazing. I have no problems there. I'm 6'3". Headroom is pretty good too. The materials are really nice and they are heated, unlike the Type R. So the seats in my FK8 Type R were maybe the most comfortable seats I've ever had in a car, and they were perfect for hugging you and keeping you planted on a spirited drive. But the downside was, if you're getting old and kind of broken like I am, getting in and out of the car wasn't always that much fun. You basically had to climb over them to get in and out. So these particular seats, they definitely don't hug you like the Type R seats, but I think that might be okay because they'll be much more comfortable for a daily driver, for something that you'll actually want to live with day in and day out. So you've got a really nice perforated leather steering wheel with a heated option. It's got a 10.2-inch instrument cluster. The gauges look really nice and clean. You have options for showing things like boost pressure and brake force and a G meter, but it doesn't have the shift lights like the Type R does. You do get a heads-up display. So one of my favorite parts about this interior is this 3-knob HVAC control system right here. Very easy to use. You do not have to take your eyes off the road to use it. Very, very simple, easy to operate. I love it. All cars need HVAC controls like this. You got a 9-inch touchscreen for the infotainment. Everything's very easy to use. Very clear graphics. It's got a volume knob, which I really appreciate. 2 USB ports, USB A and C. And of course, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And you can also do this wirelessly, which is nice. Now, a lot of people like to complain about this type of infotainment system where it kind of looks like an iPad tacked onto the dash, but it's actually perfectly positioned. I don't really have any complaints here. Now, we've got an ELS 3D studio audio system, a 16-speaker system, including a subwoofer in the back, and it sounds really nice. So it's got no sunroof, and I suppose that's for weight savings and structural rigidity. Now let's take a look at this center console. You've got wireless charging for your phone right there. Here's where you can change your driving modes. You got the parking brake right here, brake hold, and of course this amazing shifter. So good. Normal size cup holders and a smallish center console. But one small detail that I wish this Integra had was a little bit more padding on this section right here, because these seats don't really hug you in as well as like a Type R seats. I find myself putting my knee up here to kind of brace myself in the corners, and it's a very hard surface, so a little bit of padding right there would have been nice. All right, let's check out the back seats. So I've got my front seat set for myself, and in terms of legroom, I'm doing okay back here. Yeah, my knees do touch the seat in front of me, but you have to remember that there's only 2 seat belts back here. Yeah, you can only sit 2 people in the back, so I can have my knees spread a little bit and it's not so bad. But headroom is where this car is kind of lacking. At 6'3", my head is definitely touching the ceiling. So if you're a little bit shorter, it'll be okay, but if you're on the taller side, might not be the most comfortable. But I do wish you could seat 3, because I feel like this might be a little bit more useful for families if you could fit 3 back here. Not just single people without families want fun cars, but instead of a middle seat, you get 2 cup holders. And in terms of the materials back here, I feel like this is where they kind of cheaped out a little bit. There's really kind of scratchy plastics on the doors right here. Also, no USB ports, no vents, nothing. This is definitely a driver's focused car, but I feel like they could have just stepped it up just a tiny bit in this back seat. So one really great thing about this car is that it is a liftback, and that really helps out with fitting all of your stuff in the back. It's got a lot of cargo space at 24.3 cubic feet. There's no official stat for the cargo space with the seats down, but it is pretty spacious. Though that somewhat 90s throwback styling of the liftback latch cutout also means a somewhat high liftover when putting stuff in the back. but that's not really too big of a deal. The only real downside I see here is no spare tire, just a tire repair kit. So in terms of safety, Acura provides adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, collision mitigation with pedestrian detection, a bunch of airbags all around, and front and rear parking sensors. And most importantly, being a passenger car, it doesn't have any insanely huge blind spots like a lot of new giant SUVs do. This has very good visibility out the front and out the sides. Not the best out the back, but the rear view camera is pretty decent, although it's very, very dirty right now. Probably should clean that off. And while this car is pretty spacious, it doesn't feel like a giant car. It's really easy to tell where the edges of your vehicle are. All right, let's get back on the road. Now, as much as you might want to spend all of your time driving on fun, winding back roads, the reality is that most of the time, you're likely going to be engaging in completely boring and tedious driving. Most of North America is a jungle of car-filled, car-dependent places, so chances are a good portion of your driving will be commuting, dropping the kids off at school, stuck in traffic, stuck in more traffic. And as it turns out, this car is pretty good at that kind of thing too. Just drop it in comfort mode, crank up the excellent stereo, and just cruise. So actually, I've been riding around in individual mode where you can tailor these modes to your preferences. Around town, I tend to like to have the steering and the engine set to Sport Plus and the suspension set to Comfort. You know, so you can get some of those cool sounds, get the responsiveness of the engine, but not be bounced around a lot over poorly maintained roads. So fuel efficiency is just okay, 24 combined. The fuel tank is a bit small, so if you drive a lot, it will seem like you're always filling the tank. And this was also the case with my Type R. So the small fuel tank aside, the Integra Type S is actually a pretty good road trip vehicle. The Type R might start rattling your spine after a while, but the softer comfort mode here is something that I think every family member can get down with. And you can fit 4 people in here comfortably with lots of room for all of your crap in the hatch. Okay, so what does all of this cost you? The Integra Type S starts at $51,800 with a $600 paint option and destination charges. This one comes to almost $54,000. That's $7,000 more than a Civic Type R. But depending on what you're looking for, that might be worth it. It's just a smidge more than the average new car price of $49K. But really, Acura is aiming to compete against cars like the Mercedes CLA 35 AMG and the Audi S3, and hoping it can lure those buyers over with its sublime manual transmission, insanely good handling, and more favorable power to weight ratio. The Integra is lightweight by today's standards, some 300 to 400 pounds lighter than the Germans it faces off against. And if you want a luxurious, supremely capable passenger car with a manual transmission, there are almost no other cars that fit the bill. You could consider the Toyota GR Corolla, which is an incredible performer, but nowhere near as nice or mature as this Integra. The Volkswagen Golf R could be a good option, but the manual is getting dropped. The Elantra N is another fantastic possibility. It's way cheaper, but doesn't have as much power or refinement. Ultimately, the Integra Type S is near perfect. While I fully expected it to be good, I did not expect it to be this good. My only complaints are really nitpicks. I wish it would seat 5 people instead of 4. I wish it got slightly better fuel economy. I wish it were like $3,000 to $4,000 cheaper. Honestly, that's it. I already started checking local dealers to see what's available, even though I shouldn't be buying another car. Finding one could be a challenge though. Acura only intends on building 3,600 per year. It's very apparent that the Civic Type R is a beast, but its Integra Type S sibling provides a nearly identical, exceptionally fun experience in a more grown-up package that will probably be easier to live with over the long term. And with only 3,600 rolling off the factory floor per year, it may end up being the more rare and coveted car in the years to come. So what do you think of the Integra Type S? Better than the Type R and better than all of the German competition? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon. If you want to help support the channel, please consider buying a Hello Road t-shirt at helloroad.tv/shop. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you soon.